deportation and internment of citizens issued findings that the incarceration of Japanese Americans had not been justified by military necessity, but was based solely on race prejudice, war hysteria, and the failure of political leadership. We are pleased today that in the city of Portland, we have leadership that stands up for the ideals that Min stood for. This past December, the city of Portland and the city council unanimously passed a resolution that declared support for our city's Muslim community and spelled out that city government would not tolerate hate speech and welcomes all immigrants and refugees with open arms. And if I may quote Mayor Hales, this is what he said: "This is a time where there is poisonous speech in national politics, and we need to stand on behalf of the values that this city loves." We are delighted to have Mayor Hales with us today, and here with a proclamation to commemorate this special occasion is Portland's Mayor, Charlie Hales.
Thank you, Dave. It was such an honor for my wife Nancy and me to be with you all. It's so wonderful to have so many of our neighbors from Hood River here as well. And yes, it's a little tight in here, but I love what we did, that we actually re-walked the walk and we're back in what was, as you saw over the door, police headquarters. Those of you who watched Grimm might notice that the police headquarters set that is up in Northwest Portland where they film it looks a lot like this building, because this is what police headquarters used to look like, except that Stolburn has put the building in much nicer shape. Thank you, Stolburn, for accommodating this rather large crowd in your space. Speaking of history, you know, long before Minoru Yasui took his famous walk, long before President Jefferson sent those first two non-native immigrants, Lewis and Clark, out past what would become Hood River in Portland on their trip, there was a British statesman, Edmund Burke, who said, "All that's necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." That's when the idea of constitutional rights were being debated. It was a new thing in the world, in the Enlightenment. And he captured the spirit of what would become the American Constitution in those words. And then Minoru Yasui said very much the same thing when he said, when we see injustice, we must work to correct it. And he really echoed that sentiment. What's the point of all that history? Injustice always lurks. It's always lurking. And I'm very proud to live in a state, thank you again, our legislators, for their leadership, and thank you, ACLU, for your advocacy. I'm proud to live in a state where we look injustice right in the face, and in a city where we do the same thing, because it is still with us, and say, that's wrong, and it's our responsibility to stand up. And that's what you've all done by coming here today. So you make me very, very proud. Thank you for being good citizens. I won't read the whole proclamation. You're much relieved to hear that, because it recounts the history, which I think we all know so well, of what Minoru Yasui did. But it concludes with these 3 points that I'd like to read, which say, Minoru Yasui is the only Oregonian to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And whereas Minoru Yasui's story serves as a reminder to forever be vigilant in the protection of civil liberties and freedoms of all citizens and residents of Portland. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, March 28th, to be Minoru Yasui Day in Portland, and encourage all of our residents to observe this day and the principles behind it. Thank you so much. Let's do this every year.
The significance of having Minoru Yasui Day in perpetuity cannot be lost, as expressed by President Obama when he awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Min's family. And this is what he said. Today, Min's legacy has never been more important. It is a call to our national conscience, a reminder of our enduring obligation to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, an America worthy of his sacrifices. When the request went out for letters of support from our elected officials for Min's nomination for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, Attorney General Rosenblum responded immediately with a letter calling Min a role model, not just for the state of Oregon, but for our nation. So we'd like to express our deep appreciation to Attorney General Rosenblum for her support and welcome her now to say a few words.
Thank you, Lynn. Wow, I feel just incredibly honored to have been invited to join all of you in this afternoon's commemorative march and celebration of the bestowal of the Presidential Medal of Freedom on Minoru Yasui and the first Min Yasui Day. Is it okay if I call him Min? I really feel like I've gotten to know him and wish I could have met him in person. There will never be enough opportunities to stop and reflect on the important role Min played in obtaining redress for himself and in never giving up in the fight for civil rights and freedoms of all Americans. As you've heard, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is the highest civilian award bestowed in America, and Min Yasui is the first and only Oregonian to receive it. What a wonderful time to celebrate this man. The cherry trees are in bloom, and many are going to stop and read the inscriptions on the 13 stones, if you haven't already, in the Japanese American Historical Plaza nearby, that tell the story of the hardships and the indignities imposed on those of Japanese ancestry in Oregon. The stone at the center lists the 10 internment camps. One, of course, is Minidoka, where Minora Yasui and his family were interned. The last stone includes a bronze plaque with excerpts from the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, which includes an apology for the unlawful imprisonment of people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. That apology may well not have been made were it not for the courage and the tenacity of Minoru Yasui and other Asian Americans who have also received this medal, including Fred Korematsu in 1998 and Gordon Hirabayashi in 2012. I also want to give special recognition to the Oregon Nikkei Endowment. You have worked tirelessly to help Min Yasui receive this award, and now you've arranged this very special and quite fitting celebration. So thank you so much. My own very small part in this came a little over a year ago when I sent a letter to President Obama urging him to bestow this award. And among other things, I noted in my letter that Min was the first Asian American to graduate from the University of Oregon Law School, my alma mater. Also the first Asian American member of the Oregon State Bar, I believe. Our friend Peggy Nagai, a brilliant lawyer, was the lead Yasui coram nobis attorney. Without Peggy's great work on this case, his conviction may never have been vacated. She has said of her client, quote, not only did Minoru Yasui step forward as a young lawyer to test the constitutionality of the military curfew, he also understood the importance of cross-racial ethnic partnerships and helped to found African American, Latino, and Native American organizations. As Attorney General, I am committed to protecting and advancing the civil rights of all Oregonians, and it is in this vein that I wholeheartedly endorsed Minoru Yasui for a posthumous Presidential Medal of Freedom. We live under the rule of law. The old expression is that ours is a nation of laws, not men or women. This most ancient of ideas of justice, handed down to us from the Greeks, is still the guide star for our system of justice and our system of government. It found its most important expression in the early U.S. Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison, which established the United States Supreme Court, not Congress, and not the executive, as the final arbiter of constitutional issues and citizens' rights. As we all know, our Supreme Court made a grievous error in 1943 when it ruled the selective application of curfews against citizens was constitutional. Our legal system has now righted that wrong. In 1986, the same year he died, Minora Yasui's conviction was vacated. Today, more than 43 years after that fateful Supreme Court ruling, I think we can all agree on the principle Min fought for. Groups of Americans cannot be treated as criminals based on how they look or their national ancestry. In other words, institutional profiling will not be countenanced in this country.